When big money studios declare themselves AAA, it isn't necessarily a declaration of quality to gamers. Rather, it signals to investors that their product is safe, that it will have the broadest appeal possible, and will ultimately sell well upon release. One type of game is so big that it requires funding only the biggest companies can provide, and that's open world games. It also just so happens that these types of games are what the largest companies have been interested in making over the last few years. Typically, when a game is super successful, a sequel tends to follow. However, sometimes even the most lucrative and critically acclaimed games are standalone adventures. Welcome back to Game Rant, where today we're diving into the 6 best open world games that never received a sequel. Our first game is Days Gone. This game throws players into a world that has been turned upside down because of a pandemic that turned most of the population into zombies. Players take control of Deacon, a biker turned bounty hunter, as he makes his way across the Pacific Northwest in search of his wife, who may or may not be alive. Days Gone has plenty of fans willing to bat for its merits, but it didn't translate into higher sales or confidence behind the scenes at Sony. Days Gone director John Gavin drew criticism for implying that the fans were at fault for the series' untimely conclusion. While interest in the zombie genre is still a mainstay in gaming culture, it had its heyday in the 2000s and again, but less so in the 2010s, and its appeal in an open world aspect was perhaps not as strong as a draw as expected. Days Gone may have sold millions of copies, but AAA open world games are still generally expected to sell in the tens of millions if they are to be considered successful. The Saboteur is a free roam game about the liberation of 1940s Paris from Nazi forces. Rather than just exploring the city and following missions, the player is tasked with undermining the occupation one section at a time, with each success impacting the story itself. Occupied areas are entirely in black and white, whereas free areas bloom in full color. Players are free to conduct their liberation of Paris with a number of playstyles, including sneaky or guns a-blazing. While The Saboteur brought an interesting hook and compelling gameplay, and historical locations ripe for more anti-Nazi liberation activities, technical issues brought its final score down just enough to keep the IP locked away in the history books. Next up is Sleeping Dogs. After splitting off from the true crime series and forming its own open world, undercover cop identity Sleeping Dogs enamored its fans with a tight but well-packed, vibrant, and bustling open world Hong Kong. With positive reviews, fans expected to see a sequel in the coming years, and 2 were announced. While the higher-ups at Square Enix acknowledged the less-than-stellar sales in Sleeping Dogs' opening month, it was still considered a strong new property for the company. However, after a few months, it became evident that the series would not be entering the list of Square Enix's best-selling franchises anytime soon, and this led to the upcoming games not being produced. LA Noire had all the makings of a classic, which its sales and reviews reflected. So why wasn't there a sequel? Well, there were already so many huge open-world games in development in the studio at the time, and many of them had unimaginable monetary costs. So it's not surprising that Rockstar was happy to put LA Noire into the vault, at least from a management perspective. While Rockstar has its hands full with other projects, there's another reason why LA Noire 2 might never see the light of day: behind-the-scenes friction. Rumors of unstable, toxic working conditions blew up following the game's release, and since then, Team Bondi has been liquidated. Either reason could have been the final nail in the coffin for a sequel to this game. Mad Max was a forgotten open-world gem that has developed more of a cult following recently, but flew under the radar at the time of its release. Released in 2015, the game perfectly captured the spirit of the series, with adrenaline-fueled action sequences and morbidly pensive drives through the wasteland. The studio's confident departure from the plot of Fury Road allowed the game to stand out with style. However, George Miller, the franchise's creator, recently expressed that Hideo Kojima is the only person he would trust to direct a future Mad Max game. Despite Miller's criticisms, Mad Max remains an extraordinary achievement in gameplay pacing, tone, and open-world combat racing design. However, considering Kojima's schedule and the rarity of movie tie-in games, another Mad Max game is unlikely soon. Our last game on this list is Bully. Also known as Canis Canem Edit outside of North America, Bully takes the players into the chaotic community of Bulworth Academy, a fictional New England boarding school. Players control Jimmy Hopkins, a rebellious teenager who must navigate the social hierarchy, cliques, and pranks of school life while attending classes, participating in extracurricular activities, and avoiding the eye of the hall monitors. Rockstar is no stranger to dealing with controversial material in the press or taking heat from politicians and news reports, but the climate of fear in US schools, thanks to the continuous chain of gun violence-related tragedies, makes the setting more than just a sore spot in the public consciousness. Although Bully had a strong anti-bullying theme and message, this franchise will likely have to stay behind indefinitely. While most of these games seem dormant now, anything is possible. Do you have another open world game you think deserves a sequel? Be sure to let us know, and thanks for hanging out with us over here on Game Rant.